This show is brought to you in part by viewers like you who joined a Patreon or become YouTube members. Thank you. And if you could, hit the like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
The Kirk Cousins saga continues in Cleveland. It's gone up, down, left, right. We've done the whole Konami code here. And in order to decipher the Konami code or the Cousins code, I have my guy, Trayshawn, here. He covers the Atlanta Falcons to kind of give us a picture of what's going on in Atlanta and what this game between Andrew Berry and Fatnu could look like and how long it can extend. I think we both are under the understanding that given Kirk Cousins' hangups, which I feel like it's hilarious that this is a hangup for Kirk Cousins on multiple levels. But his hangup is he doesn't want to go to a team that drafts a quarterback. I'm assuming day one or day two, right? Like, I'm assuming that. He doesn't want to go because he doesn't want his job to be taken by a quarterback that they draft. And I look at Kirk, I'm like, where did you develop that insecurity? You know, hey, ain't nobody more worried about being cheated on the dude who cheated to get the girl in the first place, right? Like, that is what Kirk Cousins is on. Like, he's like, no, I know how they could be. He's the overprotective dad. You're like, oh, you were trash when you were like young. Like, that's why you worried about all of this, because that's what you was like. But yeah, Kirk on this this definitely campaign to not get selected to a team that's going to take a quarterback. To his fairness, he does have the leverage to do so, right? Like, it's mutual for Atlanta to not cut him right now. And also, he has that no trade clause, and he can just say, hey, I won't waive it until we get past the draft. Because, I mean, if you really don't want that to happen and you have that mechanism, I can't blame you for using it. I will say that it's hilarious that you, of all people, at this point of your career, like, think that that's something that, like, you deserve. But hey, man, whatever. Whatever, Kirk. Where do you see this going, and how likely do you feel like it is that Atlanta says, all right, Kirk, we're going to have you back up Michael Penix all season? Because I feel like that's like when the Browns were like, we'll have Baker Mayfield in as a backup to Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. At this point, I think you could classify the Falcons' treatment of Kirk Cousins to that of a toddler. He is in timeout right now. And he's in timeout because he threw a little fit. The season ended, and he went on a little media tour telling people, like, hey, you know what? I was hurt, actually. I didn't tell anybody, though. But, you know, I was hurt in that Saints game and there on after. And that's the real reason I was playing bad. And, you know, he's had his agent put out information that says he's not going to play for the Falcons, you know, next year and all that. And so that was kind of where we were in February. Since then, it's been much more quiet. Kirk has gone to Arthur Blank, the owner of the Falcons, for a private meeting to discuss his future with the team. So he basically went, you know, with his head down, had to go talk to Dad, had to go get his talking to, and Blank basically, from what, you know, we all understand, reiterated to Kirk that they understand the position he's in, but they're going to do what's best for the team. And right now, they think the best thing for the team is to keep him part of the squad until they get any calls or until Kirk is ready to start accepting the calls, because I think you laid it out really well. You know, Kirk wants to be able to go to a situation that he feels like he's going to have basically the job is locked up.
Mm-hmm.
He's no longer the player where a team is going to risk the job for him. Like, and if he didn't realize that when the Falcons drafted Penix, even though they gave him that no trade clause, I don't know what it's going to take, but I think kind of watching the landscape fill out, seeing other quarterbacks start to go on the move, it's going to maybe start to trigger some feelings within him that, you know, maybe makes him want to get a little bit more active. And based on his contract structure, the Falcons have no incentive to cut this man until post June 1st. So they're going to wait. They're going to wait till the draft. They're going to wait till after the draft. And I'm fully prepared for the Falcons to roll into training camp with Kirk Cousins on the roster. Maybe try to dangle him out in the preseason or whatever and hold him until they feel like they'll get an offer that's worth it, because for them to cut him at this point, it doesn't really change anything financially for the team. If they cut him, they're gonna be paying him this money. They have to, one way or the other. If he tries to sit out, they would probably love that. They would love for Kirk to throw a temper tantrum and start racking up fines so they don't have to worry about this money. But it's an interesting spot to be in right now.
It's definitely an interesting spot. The thing I find fascinating about Kirk's feelings about this is like, hey, man, Tom Brady got to 35 or something like that, and the Patriots start drafting dudes behind him, right? Like, this kind of just happens at this age, no matter who you are. I mean, it happened with Peyton where they said, hey, you got to go, brother. Like, we got Andrew Luck. It's time for you to move on, right? Like, at this point of his career, you would think he would be more, like, you don't got to accept it, right? Like, he's never going to mentor a young quarterback or anything like that. But you do have to just be like, you have to be okay with that being the reality of the situation. Part of me is like, that surprised me that he was this much of out there about it. Do you think this should be kind of a bit of a red flag for teams if you're going to bring in Kirk? Because this feels a little bit odd for a 37-year-old quarterback to be doing, right? Like, this doesn't fall under the line of stuff that you want your 37-year-old quarterback to be out here doing, like the whole injury thing, right? Like, what's that even about? Like, is that injury legit? What in the world happened there? Like, it feels like stuff we dealt with Baker Mayfield, quite frankly, in his first 4 years in the NFL. But my man, you 37. Like, this is a little bit different, right? Like, does this make you wonder if teams are looking at that and saying, like, this is a shocking display of insubordination for somebody that you don't sign in to be insubordinate, right? Like,
yeah. If we're being honest, Kirk has always been a little messy. And to me, there's two Kirk Cousins. There's Kirk Cousins during the NFL regular season, and then there's Kirk Cousins in the offseason. And Kirk Cousins in the offseason, he lets his management, talk quite a bit. And historically, we've kind of seen this when he gets into his contract years and stuff like that, where he can be a little prickly. He can be a little difficult to deal with. He stands firm on what he says he wants and everything like that. But last year, we kind of watched Kirk. There were some messages that came out initially from his camp, but not from him directly. Essentially, like, hey, the whole reason I came here is because I thought I was going to have this job on lock. There wasn't going to be this whole rookie QB situation, this, that, and the other. Kirk's not expecting to be a mentor, all that. Michael Penix's very first game, Kirk Cousins led the prayer for the quarterback group, for Penix, praying in his name for him to go out and succeed, let Penix run out of the tunnel, gave him a pat on the back, was a consummate pro. Kirk Cousins is going to do what he needs to do to cash those checks at the end of the day. So whenever the regular season...
So this is more Kirk Cousins' agent than it is Kirk Cousins.
Exactly.
That makes a lot more sense. Okay. Yeah. So going back to that injury thing, right? Because I remember you posted an article about that when it broke. How legit do you think that is? Because it is very convenient to say, hey, man, right before I threw 2 touchdowns and 9 interceptions, I got hurt, right? Like, again, there's some parallels to Baker Mayfield that I find just coincidental, not like causal or anything, but just kind of coincidental and hilarious. And it's like, that was the same thing Baker did, was like, hey, man, the play fell off a cliff, but I was injured, right? Yeah. And the injury, like the severity of the injury grew as we got further and further away from the games that he played on those injuries. It seems like that's a similar thing that's happening with Kirk. How do you parse out like how much of this feels like it was injury related with Kirk, or if this is like an excuse, because the timing of it is rather convenient?
Yeah, so I think that's something that the management team cooked up. Look, I've seen.
You're saying Kirk's management team?
I think the management team helped cook that one up. The timing was awfully convenient. The funny thing about Kirk Cousins' bad stretch of play is that, like, when you watch it, you're mainly questioning the decisions he's making, not the velocity off the football or things like that. There might be a couple of throws where you're like, ooh, he doesn't really have it anymore. to make that throw. You saw that during the 6-3 stretch. It's not like during the 6-3 stretch he lit it up. I feel like most people have forgotten about the Steelers game where the Falcons didn't run like any play action, and Kirk wasn't under center at all, and pretty much everybody thought like the Achilles was cooked. But with the shoulder, he did go on for one day. The injury report, the team supposedly checked it out. I think we're just dealing with like a soft tissue injury here that's easy to hide, but can be difficult to manage and more annoying with more reps over time. And we've tried to blow this up into what it is now. He ended up coming off the list. Initially, when this happened, he was asked by Mark Raimondi, who is the ESPN beat reporter for the Atlanta Falcons. He asked him after the Broncos football game. He said, Kirk, you popped up on the injury report earlier this week. What was up with that? Kirk said, oh, that was just a clerical error. He's like, we had a walkthrough day that day, so I was able to get checked out. If we had practiced full go, I wouldn't have been on the injury report or showed up for anything. So in that moment, the whole conversation should have been killed and we're all good. Kirk regs this back up during Super Bowl media week and says, well, it was actually a little bit of a bigger issue. I was just being a football guy and playing through it. It just doesn't really line up with what we saw on film. And I wouldn't even blame him for the Broncos game. The Falcons were missing 9 starters coming into it. And then they lost Darnell Mooney and they lost Charlie Warner, who's essentially does split tight end 1 duties because he's a blocking tight end. And they just got blown out of that game due to injury issues more than just Kirk being bad. But now we've got to have this conversation about, well, was he really hurt? Was he not? I just don't think he was hurt to the degree of like, let me go and blame my entire 2-9 run on a shoulder injury.
Yeah, and like at least to Baker Mayfield's credit, like he legitimately did. Like we saw him destroy that shoulder, and like he had a brace on for the rest of the year. And some of this stuff was like, okay, he's missing that throw because he's
Kirk threw the ball like 2 plays after his injury.
Yeah, like that's the thing with Kirk. I'm like, you ain't wore not one brace. You know when an athlete feels like something's off, they're always like toying with whatever body part it is, right? They're always like cautious about it. He's like, there's no real any of that popping up in your body language. It just it felt like a weird thing to pop up during Super Bowl media week, which I don't know, again, might just be his people trying to muddy the waters a little bit, make somebody feel more comfortable with paying Kirk $20 million to be like, hey man, that bad stretch of games had nothing to do with who you're gonna get if you trade for him. What do you think Kirk is at this point? Like, I know people tend to paint the picture of like, oh, the Kirk at the beginning of the season, that's the real Kirk Cousins. If he gets a year away from this Achilles injury and gets to recover better, or, the Kirk at the end of the season is the real Kirk Cousins. Where do you think Kirk is if he goes to a place that's more or less exactly what he's been doing his whole career? Like if he goes back to Kevin, that's back to his glory days out there in Minnesota, same offensive coordinator he had out there in 2019 when he was his most efficient. So like, what do you think is left in him if he goes back to something super familiar for him?
Yeah. When people say that the 6-3 Kirk Cousins was the real Kirk Cousins, if we're going to split it up into pre-injury, no injury, I would say that they're right, but probably not in the way that they mean it. Like, yeah, that was the real Kirk Cousins. There were a lot of why did you make that throw decisions. There were some, like, if you look at the Seahawks game, that's probably a really good example, and kind of why I tell a lot of people I don't really buy the whole like issue or the whole injury deal. That Seahawks game was a classic Kirk Cousins stinker. Like the team was doing great, you didn't really see any signs of issue, and then out of nowhere, Kirk's like throwing the 2 most Kirk Cousins picks you've ever seen. And the Seahawks are able to run away with the game. Falcons aren't able to get anything going on offense. And Kirk Cousins has those types of performances, like, about 4 to 5 times every season. It's kind of like what ultimately makes teams and fans get super frustrated with him and fed up is that you're not really finishing these seasons the way you need to or want to. You see the crumbling happen at the most, at the worst times. So I think, with all that being said, that if he were to get back with Stefanski, that there's probably something there. There's a high floor. Like you could probably get the 18th best quarterback play out of Kirk Cousins. I think that's what the Falcons, like when you average everything off, were getting from Kirk last year. And that's kind of like where I would put him at. I think the ceiling, I think you could maybe get top 15 play out of him. I don't think we're cracking, anything higher than that. But I would say, if you're a team with a legitimate defense, and you've got weapons that he can just distribute to, he's going to be fine. He's going to be comfortable in that offense. He's going to be able to do enough to help a team out for another year. I don't know if he's going to be able to do anything beyond this football season, because while you do expect him to regain a little bit of strength now after having another year of recovery, there is the age factor. There is the natural physical regression that's going to, hit him as he ages. So, Kirk Cousins isn't somebody that was always known for his arm strength in the first place. So it kind of helps that his game has always been about efficient distribution. So
Yes.
I think that helps him in terms of aging, but he's going to hit a wall at some point to where he can't make those throws that he needs to make. But I don't think that hits next year.
Yeah. There's the thing also with that shoulder injury, right? If he's telling the truth, it was a legitimate factor. You have to ask yourself this question. You've had 2 injuries now, back-to-back seasons, where it basically took you off the shelf, right? Like you played so bad that you had to be pulled off the shelf in 2024, and then in 2023 you were just out, right? So does that become a concern, right? I think the thing that a lot of people don't get with older quarterbacks is they can be what they used to be for a game. Right? But it's like the 17 game stretch, right? That's my whole thing when people ever bring up Joe Flacco. He was fine here for 6 games. I'm like, yeah, he should be fine for like a month and a half. But like, if you have him play a whole season, then you're going to see like, okay, some small neck on his shoulder, which is like some soft tissue thing, shouldn't be a big deal. Wasn't a big deal when Kirk Cousins was 28, right? But at 34, and you notice, you're getting older. I definitely notice as I am like a hair away from 30. Them little things that used to not bug you, used to not stop you from going to the gym. Oh yeah, that shit stops you, right? The older you get. And I think it's those little like injuries that might not go on the injury report, might not be a big deal, right? But might be the stuff that makes you look a lot more inconsistent, or maybe you're not able to go 4 quarters this week, right? It's like LeBron can break out and get 40 still. He's LeBron. But is LeBron going to play 70 games and average 40 or 30, 10 and 9 like he used to? No, that's just not where he's at anymore. That's the thing about age with Kirk is like, okay, can he play well enough at this age and stay healthy enough at this age to give you 17 games, a season's worth of work, which is to say, you're going to get some stinkers in there. It's Kirk Cousins, right? But is he going to give you so many stinkers that it becomes unbearable? That is the fear that I have with Kirk at this point, which is like, if I'm choosing between Kirk and Russ, and look, these aren't great choices, but you could be choosing between Carson Wentz and like who's worse than Carson Wentz? Gardner Minshew, right? Like you could have worse choices here. At least these 2 are established starters in the league. With Russ, I think Russ gets shat on a lot, right? We've gotten used to shitting on Russ. But to be fair to Russ, he's thrown like 20 touchdowns, 12 interceptions the last 2 years, and he's kept his teams above water, right? Like, now, you can make the argument that Denver Bo Nix got better, which is not a great endorsement of how Russ was playing in that system, right? Jerry Jeudy gets away from Russ for 1 year, gets 1,200 yards. Like there are some obvious downfalls to Russell Wilson here. But I look at both of them and I wonder, I'm like, Kirk's a better fit. But Russ's body seems to be holding up from an injury standpoint much better than Kirk's is. But it might just be because Russ had his injury at the beginning of the season and not at the end, right? Because Russ missed like the first 6 weeks of the season. So I don't really know what to do with either of them because you can easily see how they could be good enough to get you through a year, but at their ages, it's like, how sure of a bet are they to be able to be healthy long enough, and how good does your backup have to be in order to kind of live with that? Because trading for Kenny Pickett tells me that they think that Kenny Pickett's an upgrade from DTR, which I think is fair, like given how DTR had played. But it's one thing to play Kenny Pickett 3 games. It's another thing if you have to play him 5, 6 games. Like, what life do you think the team that trades or signs one of these older quarterbacks is going to be living?
Yeah, and honestly, like, I think from the mental standpoint, I'm probably going with Kirk, just because I don't know if Russ, like, having to learn his third offense in the last 3 years now. We see, like, the decision-making struggles and everything like that. Like, I would probably lean towards Kirk in this scenario. I feel good about the Browns having Pickett as the backup with Kirk Cousins as a starter. I kind of actually feel like, if there's any coach that can make that work, it's Stefanski. But, you bring up a good point. I'm really curious to see what the Falcons are thinking, because if Kirk does go out, and it's what's made this process very interesting, that QB2 is a legitimate need for them. Mm-hmm. And now you're talking about Michael Penix, who, like, the joke before he was able to play is like, well, this guy had 2 massive injuries in college that wiped out 2 playing years. Like, is he going to be able to hold up? And boy, wouldn't it be something if the Falcons got rid of Kirk Cousins, and then the future of what they view to be the future of their franchises suffers some catastrophic injury, and then Atlanta is, like, left, with no real option at quarterback 2 to keep the season going. And that's why I keep telling people that I think them holding on to Kirk Cousins is a legitimate option, because right now they're basically like, we have the best QB2 in the league. We don't care if we're paying him a lot of money. We already committed to the guaranteed, like, 2-year money last year. So, like, we were always going to take this hit. Like, no, we didn't envision it being, like, with him as QB2. That obviously is not how they wanted us to go.
You just have to view it as, we're just paying this much for quarterback, period, right? Like, You're not really getting into the details of who's getting what.
Exactly. And so for them, like, I totally believe that they're fine with rolling into the season with Kirk, because they don't want to have to hit this QB2 market. It's gotten picked over a good bit already. I feel like Russ would actually be a target, somebody that they would try to like to look for, but they're not making a single move until they can get Kirk off this roster. So it's going to be fascinating, because there's a couple of teams left out there who could sign or could make a couple of moves that basically leave it towards Terry who's the Browns GM? Why is it
Andrew Berry?
Terry and Berry just having a standoff here well into late summer, and seeing who's going to budge for the conditional 7th or conditional 6th round pick.
Yeah, you guys let the obvious answer to this question of who could back up Michael Penix. Good old Jacoby Brissett. Well, he's in Arizona now, right? Like, you're going to have to call Josh Dobbs, see what he's doing, right? Like,
they're going to have to find somebody at this point, because, it's going to be names I don't know.
Or a name you know very well.
No. I didn't know where you go. We're not dipping our toes into those waters again.
Hey, man, you thought of him so highly once, you didn't want to even consider trading for Lamar Jackson. I feel like you got to bring back Dez.
No. The Falcons already brought back a former quarterback,
the Riddler,
Felipe Franks. Felipe Franks was re-signed after they let him go.
Not trying to get a Riddler rerun here. Is he on a team right now?
He's not. He's going to Pittsburgh. He's not on right now. He's gonna go find Arthur Smith.
The AFC North's just gonna run back the worst draft class of all time.
That's what I'm hoping.
What, Pittsburgh? I mean, not Pittsburgh, but I think the Ravens have Cooper Rush as the backup to Lamar, which is a underrated. What the hell is that decision?
QB wins.
Yeah. Because like, how do you go from running the offense? This video is absolutely not about this, but I don't know how you go from like, all right, Lamar's hurt, we're gonna run the same thing with Coop.
Well, I can't wait to see Cooper Kupp running RPO
out the pistol,
like cooking. He's gonna cook too because it's gonna be the second unit, and they're gonna be like, this shit works. Hold on,
tiptoe. Like, it's going to be fascinating to see that. But let's talk about if the Browns were to trade for Kirk Cousins. I get the feeling that the compensation, I think the Falcons will take what they get compensation-wise. I think the argument is going to be about how the money is divided.
That's all they care about, yeah.
Yeah. How much flexibility you think Atlanta is ultimately going to have on like, okay, we will eat this much for it, because they do have to consider that some of that money that they're going to eat has to be factored into the budget for whatever backup you sign.
Yeah. I think
unless you draft one with that 6th round.
Yeah. I really think that I don't know. I think the most they want is like a 6th round pick out of this scenario. Mm-hmm. So I think that they're fine eating a fair, like they might eat the 27. They might eat the guarantee for this year, and then just ask whoever is making the trade to pick up the $10 million that's guaranteed. So basically, the way I look at whoever picks up Kirk Cousins is trading for a 2-year, $37.5 million guaranteed contract, and so they're going to want to negotiate pieces off of that. I think if they take $10 million and they ask Atlanta to eat the 27, they'll be like, that's fine. We were going to eat 40, so we'll eat 27.
And ultimately, do you think Kirk Cousins will be willing to do a whole year as a backup with Atlanta? Like, because it's one thing if he ends up having to be a backup somewhere. It's another thing if this place that told you weren't going to be a backup tells you got to be, like, you know how it is if like your job told you it wasn't the deal and then that ends up being the deal, you resent them, and it just ends up being a rougher situation to take than like if you had to do it somewhere new.
You know, there is like I can definitely see Kirk being upset, and I feel like a lot of times you would have people, hey, this isn't really right. Let the player free up, blah, blah, blah. But this is like Kirk Cousins we're talking about. This is a man that has more career earnings than Tom Brady. Like, it's hard to feel bad for
Tom Brady at the bank.
It's hard to feel bad for Kirk Cousins. It'd be like, well, it's not like they're keeping you from like doing anything you didn't already fail at doing, which is like lead multiple franchises to the playoffs, Super Bowl, all that. It's like you kind of had your chance. You've made all your money. Yeah, man, they might actually force you to stay there. He might get mad, and maybe they're counting on it. Because again, like if Kirk wants to start racking up fines, that just really helps the team. They don't really care at that point. Like obviously, it hurts them from a QB2 standpoint. They need to have that position filled on the roster, but from there, I think it really plays into Atlanta's strengths if he's going to try to take that approach.
All right, man. Last question. Two-part question. 1, 15, who do you guys think you'll get? Who do you want them to get? And who do you want them to draft the least?
Who do I want them to draft the least?
Within reason, right? You can't just say like somebody who's like a 5th round grade.
Yeah, no, within reason. I don't want them to take any of the 1st round wide receivers. I do not want them to draft Will Johnson. And that's like not like me like being super anti-Will. It's just like the way that they built this team in the offseason, it would make no sense to draft Will Johnson at this point and bypass edge. So I'm all take a pass rusher. I'm hoping that they just take like one of Shamar Stewart, Mike Green, or even Mykel Williams. But I don't want them to take anybody at 15. I want them to trade down. I don't care if they trade down to 20. I don't care if they trade down to whatever. I want them to trade down. And in that scenario, they'll probably end up with Donovan Ezraku.
Okay. What if Cleveland called you and said, hey, you can have the number 2 pick. Abdul Carter's right there. How much is the edge need? How much would you trade to fill the edge need?
I mean, mean, we're trading. What do you want?
Like last time we did this, it worked out. We got Julio Jones. Like,
yeah. They love trading up because that's how they got Julio, they got Michael Vick in a massive trade. So like they'll do that, I think. I don't know what they have to give because we have slim pickings for draft picks this year. Atlanta only has 5 and 2 are 7ths. So we have no 3rd round pick. We have no 5th round pick. That was Kirk Cousins tampering. And we lost a 6th round pick in a trade for Van Jefferson 2 years ago. So we only have a 1st, 2nd, 4th, and 2 7ths.
Y'all traded for Van Jefferson?
We traded a pick for that is the Arthur Smith Atlanta Falcons. Mid-season, we need some juice. Mid-season trade that's going to turn this thing around. Give me Van Jefferson.
Hey, did he bring him to Pittsburgh with him?
He brought that man. He brought him to Pittsburgh. He brought Cordell Patterson to Pittsburgh. He brought quite a few of his former Falcons with him.
Because you need to run back that offense.
You need to run back that offense at all costs.
Yeah. Because I think the thing that I pointed out with Kirk once was like, he's definitely not going to go down the field as much as like he used to. He didn't go down the field much before. Because I pointed it out like halfway through the season that Ray McCloud was like number 3 in targets to him. And I was like, that's not good. That is not great. Yeah. That Ray McCloud is getting more touches than he's ever. And then you watch him and it's like, yo, he really is throwing this shit to Ray a lot.
Most touches since high school, man. I don't even.
I was like, I wonder if they realized this in Atlanta. And then I took one listen. I'm like, oh, they know that Ray McCloud has more targets than Kyle Pitts right now. Yeah. Like, yeah. But it was a rough year. You know what you need to do. Bring back glory. The Riddler return. Let's bring back.
To answer your question, this team will do anything for a pass rusher. I think Trey Hendrickson's going to be a name to watch. You know, hoping for you guys that he gets sent out of the division and down my way would be. We like the Bengals. Former superstars have worked out well for us, so we'll take a shot on another one.
If you want to defang the Bengals, do it, please. Because that would make them toothless.
I don't know why they won't pay us.
Yeah, but by the way, just a word of warning: if Mike Tomlin ever calls the Atlanta Falcons about George Pickens, hang up the phone. You don't ever want to do it.
Mike and Raheem are buddies too, man. I'm so nervous about that specific because Atlanta needs like a
because he's like, oh yeah, he went to Georgia. Yeah,
I'm scared that we're actually like,
don't do it.
Talked about it.
Look at the history of every wide receiver Mike Tomlin has traded. It's like what Freak? What was his name?
Deontay Johnson ended up on like 2 teams last year. He went to the Panthers and then the Ravens.
Chase Claypool, Antonio Brown got fired from his job before his job even started. And what's his name? He played in the UFL recently. Martavius Bryant.
Bryant.
Yeah, freak, right? And that's the one you could argue went the best for the team that traded for him. Because at least they got a couple games out of him. Like everybody else, they didn't get one good game from trading a 2nd round pick for Chase Claypool.
Yeah, I'm like, that was the Bears, right? That was like one of the first moves Poles made.
He still got a job? Does he? Yeah, he does.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it's the same. Oh, yeah. That's Caleb's. That's their. Yeah. That's.
He's tied to Caleb. Wow. He hung on to that life raft.
Lucky, I guess.
But yeah. Just word of advice: don't do it. If Mike Tomlin calls you fed up with the wide receiver,
I want nothing to do with George Pickens, but you know what I'm fighting down here, and that's them dogs. Man.
Oh yeah. Nah, man.
They don't care.
You don't need it. You absolutely don't need it. But we'll see what happens here. It's going to be an interesting rest of this process, this game of chicken between Atlanta. What do you think is going to finally happen between these two teams? Do you think that they come to a deal? Do you think that there might be a deal in place? They're just waiting for the draft to make Kirk happy? Like, how fast after day 2 of the draft do you think a deal gets done to get Kirk up out of there?
I think we hear about it pretty quickly, to be honest with you. I think they let the draft play out. That's what smart teams would do. I think Cleveland is going to do that. I think they're going to not just assume anything at this point. And then if it goes the way that I think I kind of expect it to go, we'll see them make that call for Kirk. And they'll just, ride out next year with Garrett and Abdul Carter winning every game for them.
There's worse ways to live than have Abdul Carter and Myles Garrett on your defense. With Kirk, how serious do you think he is about this? Like, do you think it's just a round one quarterback? Like, if the Browns just take Abdul Carter there, get out the first round without trading back for like a Shedeur Sanders or something like that, then he's like, okay, I can live with Jalen Milroe being behind me or Will Howard being behind me. Do you think he's fine there? Or is it he's just like, hey, I don't want you to spend a first because I know I'm going to get benched if you take a first round pick?
As you were saying and everything, I'm like, yeah, he won't care. But then I'm like, wait, Kirk Cousins was a guy that was drafted in the 4th of the round.
Because he might look at Will Howard and be like,
worried
just
about
like
this.
young me.
Yeah,
Big 10 dude, weak arm, makes really good, quick decisions. Like, he might be like, nah, I don't need him to teach him anything.
I think if it's not a first round pick, he's fine. He understands the game is the game at this point. Pickett might be more mad than Kirk in that scenario. But yeah, I don't think he would. I don't think he would have too much issues because again, like if he is traded off this deal, he knows that he's on a 2-year timeline regardless.
Yeah.
So there is no like, hey man, like we're making a 4-year run together out of this. It's like no, we traded for 2 years of your deal, and then whoever picks this up, they'll be able to cut him after this first year if it doesn't go well. So there's really no strings attached for whoever gets Kirk, and I think he's going to understand that. His stance of wanting to get cut, I'm like, whatever deal you were to get offered, you're not getting close to this deal again, and it's going to be a deal that tells you outright you're not. We're giving you an off season to show us you can do this, and that's that.
All right, but Trey, thank you for being on. Make sure you go follow him on Twitter at Trey. Is it with the 3 still?
Yeah.
The TR? Yeah, the 3, the Trey Sean. There on Twitter and Blue Sky. Also, he writes for the Falcoholic. Any other podcasts and stuff where you're able to kind of give a Falcons perspective of things, or just like what's going on down there in the NFC?
Yeah, I do some work on the Falcoholic Live, just the Falcoholic YouTube channel. You catch us doing different videos there. We got a little show called Tuesday Takes with Trey Sean, where we're doing recaps, opponent previews, talking about similar things like this. So if you want to hear more Kirk Cousins insider drama, that'd be a good place to check it out.
All right. Make sure you guys go check that out. Everybody else, have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.